We are receiving via the Reuters news agency, and it's from the Swedish Foreign Ministry. Our next guest will want to know more about this. They are saying that the UN report that has been some 15 months or so in the conclusion has now concluded that Julian Assange was arbitrarily detained, that according to the UN. Joining us now is journalist and friend of Julian Assange, Vaughn Smith. Hello to you, Vaughn. Thanks for joining us. So that's what we're hearing from the Swedish Foreign Ministry, likely to be confirmed tomorrow. Your reaction to that, first of all?
Well, I'm delighted. I think we all want to see a resolution to this unsatisfactory situation of Julian Assange being stuck in the Ecuadorian embassy. He's appealed to the highest authority available to him, and they've come out in his favour completely. And I'm delighted that the Swedish government have recognised this, and hopefully they'll drop the case, and Julian will be able to go to Ecuador or wherever he likes.
But what's happening in Sweden doesn't really have anything to do with whether or not, or the way that he was detained in the United Kingdom, does it?
Well, I would hope it does, because if the Swedes drop the case, what's the point in extraditing somebody for a case that doesn't exist? One would hope.
I think we're a little bit confused on that. So let's just row back on that, if we may, and perhaps you can explain it to us in a bit more detail, if you would. As far as the UN is concerned, it looks as though they are saying that he has been arbitrarily detained in the United Kingdom, but nevertheless he still has a case of rape against him that he has to answer in Sweden. The two things are separate, aren't they?
No, they're not separate at all. No, I think you've got it quite wrong. The UN have looked at the whole case. They've had submissions from the British authorities and the Swedish authorities and from Julian Assange, and they have determined that he's, as I say, unlawfully detained. And it's all about the legal stuff. It really is about the case. They really are not separate.
Is it appropriate for the UN to decide on an alleged rape case in Sweden?
Well, yes, it's certainly appropriate for the UN to determine that, we have failed shamefully in our human rights, in our treatment of this person. I think to disregard that sends a terrible message. I mean, what about our own involvement in the UN Human Rights Council? If we're going to cherry pick their judgments?
How have we failed in, you're saying the United Kingdom has failed in its human rights? In what way? They've not had access to him because he has decided to stay within the Ecuadorian embassy for several years now.
Well, yes, because they have been absolutely categorically clear that he cannot leave the embassy or he will be arrested. Julian Assange is effectively a political prisoner as a consequence of this. He is being detained unlawfully, and that's what they've said. I don't for the British government to sort of backtrack on that.
They haven't said it's unlawful, have they? Because it's not legally binding, so actually it can't be unlawful, can it?
Well, the question of whether it's legally binding might be very convenient, but how are we going to hold our head high as a country that considers itself to be, full of fair and decent people, if we're not prepared to respect rafts of human rights legislation? And we'll be going against bodies that we support when it comes to Aung San Suu Kyi or the Washington Post journalist who was recently released as a consequence of this body as well, this UN body. What's the UN for if we're not prepared to recognise when it makes determinations that aren't in our favour?
He is wanted in connection with a sexual assault claim still. Shouldn't his alleged victim be given the courtesy of further investigation?
Look, I'm afraid I don't take that at all, that line of questioning. I think it's completely wrong. I think you're missing the point that probably the only people who have properly considered all the evidence and everything that's available are this UN tribunal. And they have come out, it's completely black and white, and said that we're wrong to arrest him if he leaves. They've also suggested that he deserves compensation. This has moved into the political sphere. They're effectively saying that he's a dissident. And I'm sorry, they have considered exactly this information that you're talking about. Julian Assange hasn't seen any evidence against him. Interestingly, the Swedes don't seem to want to prosecute the case. The Crown Prosecution Service even have been sending emails discouraging the Swedes from prosecuting the case and coming to interview him in London as he's asked to be done, which is the necessary next step.
a bit perplexing, isn't it? What should he do next then, do you think?
Well, we've got to free him. I mean, come on. This is absurd. What sort of people are we? If we really are fair and decent people, let the man go. We should also actually look into how it got to this point, that we have a dissident here. I mean, it's fine, isn't it? We make such a fuss, like, a siren call of when another country fails in human rights, but we don't appear to want to know when we do. Julian Assange embarrassed powerful people. The frightening thing is, if the British and the Swedish government don't respond to this, what if you or I or anybody in our country offends powerful people in this way or embarrasses them? If there's not an authority like the UN that we can appeal to that will allow for some change and correction, I think that's utterly chilling.
If he steps out, do you expect him to step out of the embassy tomorrow?
Oh, no, I don't know. I mean, I doubt if he's going to step up unless he's given some sort of assurance that, people are going to respect the UN. And if we can't respect the UN, what's it for?
OK, so the Metropolitan Police Service has said once again today that if he does step out, he will be arrested and he will be taken back to Sweden to face this charge of rape against a young woman there. He won't step out unless he gets...
May I interrupt and correct you? There is no charge. Please, people have got to stop saying there's a charge against Julian Assange.
Okay,
there are only allegations that nobody seems to want to prosecute.
No, I'm so sorry, but as a woman, I'm afraid I can't accept you saying only allegations. That's completely unacceptable. There is an allegation. There is an allegation of rape against him by a woman in Sweden. It looks as though if he steps out of the embassy tomorrow, he will be arrested and taken back to Sweden to face that allegation of rape against him. As his friend, would you advise him? As his friend, if I may just ask the question, as his friend,
authority than the UN tribunal that's looked at this, that's looked at all the facts, and you haven't. I'm sorry, that doesn't stand up.
The Metropolitan Police Service has said he will be arrested if he steps out of the Ecuadorian embassy tomorrow.
It's utterly shameful. This is totally shameful. If we can't respect a UN body that's looked at this properly, then I'm sorry, we're going to lose a great deal of international reputation. On an emotional level, I completely understand. As a woman, and I would agree with you. If something had gone on here, it needs to be addressed. But the UN tribunal is saying that that Julian Assange is the victim in this case, and I don't understand why you can't see that.
If I may ask the question again, sir, please. So, he is presently in the Ecuadorian embassy. If he steps out tomorrow, he will be arrested, according to the Metropolitan Police Service, who have been manning that embassy, as you know, for some considerable time. As his friend, would you advise him not to?
No, I'm not going to advise him to do anything. He'll do what he wants. He's quite capable of working out what to do. What I would say, though, is I don't think it would be sensible if the British authorities aren't going to respect the United Nations. Then clearly he's at risk, and he's the dissident that I'm suggesting, and he'll remain in that embassy until somebody sees sense. I still feel there's a chance, surely, that the Swedes aren't going to prosecute a case under these circumstances when I don't believe there is a proper case against him. So it's of course possible that the Swedes drop these allegations, and then I don't see the point of extraditing somebody to meet no allegations.
Good to talk to you. Thank you for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. Thank you. So within the last few moments, and that is what we have been hearing from the Swedes. They are telling us that the UN has decided, let me get the right phraseology, Swedish Foreign Ministry, according to the Reuters news agency, saying that the UN report concludes that Julian Assange has been arbitrarily detained. So what's going to happen next? As far as the Metropolitan Police is concerned, they say if he steps outside, he will be arrested.